Okay, so in this video, you have your base mesh. It looks fine. It's human shaped. And if it's not, you don't have that many verts to have to fix to get it into a human shape. But like, try to use a lot of your reference material to put it all together. We'll be able to work with this and tweak this. The most important thing to think about is that none of these shapes should be twisted or overlapping in with each other. Like, I shouldn't have any part of this mesh that looks like inverted like that, because that's going to create really weird stuff that isn't always easy to see. But now I'm going to make hands, and you'll see why I do hands completely separately. When we think about our fingers and our toes, there's as many joints, and our fingers and toes combined are more bones and joints than the rest of our body. And when it comes to game characters and CG characters, often more geometry is put in the hands than the rest of the body. If you think about an arm, limb articulation is relatively simple. Fingers have a lot going on, and there's so many ways they can move. They're very complicated, and they require a lot of time on their own. So I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to create, not even worrying about the scale right now. I'm just making it by itself. I'm going to make a cube. I also want to hide my reference because I don't need it for now. And we don't need this either, because we're just basing off of an old-fashioned hand and thinking about the rules of a hand. One of the nice things about hands, like practicing them, is anytime you need reference, you have one. It's right there, and you just look at it and just ask yourself, how long is this relative to this? How wide is this? How much do these line up with each other? So the first thing I'm going to do is just start with the default cube. Nothing special. I'm going to scale it down, SZ 0.25. I want it to be a quarter as tall, because it's like our hand, this palm is kind of like a big square, but it's kind of got a flatness here. And so that's my big secret. I just do that. I'm going to A and apply my all transform, so my scale and my rotations. This is forward, and now I'm going to make the basis for my finger. So I'm going to Shift D. And a finger, it should be, relatively round. So I'm going to say SX 0.25. And the thing again about a finger is it's about the same length as the overall palm, an individual finger. So I'm going to use that as a basis to work with. So this will be the base for my finger. Now, I want the position and rotation for my finger to be about here. It's going to make it a lot easier to work with. So let's scoot it back, because that way when I'm rotating and everything, it's going to rotate from that spot, and I don't need this face. So let's start with just one of these fingers, because we're going to build all the fingers on top of it. I'm going to scale this front in because a finger should taper. So just a little bit. You don't have to go extreme, although if your character is more extreme, that's fine too. This one's going to be a little simpler. And I'm going to add an edge loop through the middle. I'm going to select the top and bottom edges, and then S and X to just sort of round it out. So we're looking for like a 6-sided cylinder. And then I can say I for inset. Oh, see this right here, my inset isn't looking even, and that's because I still have my scale. So A, and we only want to apply scale right now. Leave everything else the same, just apply scale. Take these two, I, and then if I hold Control, I can drag that out a little bit. So I can get a little bit of depth. And this is just the tip of the finger, really. Now, I want to figure out how many digits are going on here. So we know it curls in. In order for our finger to curl in like that, this needs to be longer than this needs to be longer than this. And there's actually kind of a ratio to it. So I'm going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuts in here. Because really, this sort of section here is my first digit. Then this is the second part, and then this is the third part, giving them the right ratios. So I can use the actual geometry tools to help me figure out my relationship. Let's go into our X-ray mode, because we want to be able to select all of our verts. And what we want to do is select these front, because we don't want to leave a finger. You don't want to model them straight like that. Especially when we're modeling, they tend to be curved, they tend to be more natural, so we want to put a little of that curve in already. Now it's going to rotate, and so I could rotate it and move it. It's not that hard by itself, and so let's just do that. I'm just going to rotate it and curve it, kind of put it into position. Now I'm going to select my second set, so up to my second row here, rotate it, and place it down a little bit here. Something like that. And now I have the basis for one finger. And I'm going to use this for my other fingers, but let's get the palm ready. The palm, again, feels pretty complicated, but it's got a lot of pieces. For one thing that's important to understand about the palm is if you look at it from a side view, and I put like, my pencil here, it's not flat, it lays at an angle. Again, much like the shoulder has a pretty strong angle, our finger here has a really strong angle, where the palm, the bottom of my palm, and the top of my knuckle do not line up with each other. So I want to build that in right away. So I'm going to hit G and slide it forward a little bit. And we can see that little shape. I guess first I'm going to put in a line right here, and you'll see why I'm going to need this. Now I'm going to take this G, let's slide this forward, and that's going to be the basis of my palm. That's going to build in that little slant to it. I got 4 fingers coming off the front here, so I need 4 divisions. Nothing to it. Now, I also want to get this idea of, I know I'm going to have these 6-sided fingers, and I want enough sides on this too. So let's add a division running along here, along the side. This is going to be the side tops of my palm. And I can soften things up right from the top. So, because I want the edges to be relatively soft. When I say soft, I mean I want to curve them. So I can say S of X. That's just going to help me build that shape out. So now let's give us room for the fingers. Of course, just like when we're doing modeling the character, when we're doing the legs, we need space in between the legs. You need space between the fingers. They don't wedge straight together. There's a whole space in between them. So let's build that out. I'm going to line these up a little bit better. And then I'm going to shape this out because, again, on the palm, this middle knuckle is further out. And it tends to be a little higher up, but let's go here and just push it out a little bit. And then I can take this, the part of the pinky here, we can see it kind of curves back. So we do the same thing, just G and curve it back. We're trying to create the overall shape before we, like in the early stages when it's easy. So now I'm going to select these and I'm going to hit Control B and just create that space in between them. So that'll be a good start to what I want. Not too shabby. In fact, before I do this, I'm going to put one more cut in here. So I hate to go back on this. I was working on a bunch of ways of doing this yesterday, and I feel like this is a good workflow. So I'm going to add an extra shape in there. Again, my apologies. It always annoys me when I'm watching a tutorial or something and someone goes back a lot. So I'm going to go from here to here, and I'm going to merge it at last. Do the same thing here. Ooh, you know what? Scratch that. I'm leaving it exactly like this. Sorry. I know I'm doing exactly what I said I hate doing. I'm going to leave it like this for a second, and you'll see why. So now I want to build out the base of the thumb. And that's going to come from, if we think about the thumb, the base of the thumb is here. It's about halfway through our palm. And then the side comes off sort of the side of our hand. So I'm going to choose this face, and this face, and this is going to be the start of our thumb. So I'm going to hit E, and let's pull it off a little bit, and of course, scale it down, but it is not very round, even as I sort of rotate and move it to change it. So what I need to do is look at it and use that circle tool. Let's give it a good rotation so that it's twisting as naturally as possible. That looks pretty good. And I want to rotate it because it's really important that the thumb, a lot of people, again, get this wrong where it's straight out or it's straight down. It's not. It's at an angle. That's why we model it like that, because to be at an angle, it has to be able to oppose. And opposing thumbs are really important in humanoid characters. So let's give it this, just putting it into position. It should be about the same length as a finger as well. And so it's got a pretty thick base, but it tapers off pretty quickly. So something like this. And I rotate around a lot in here to get a good view of it. And make no mistake, fingers are considered to be one of the tougher parts of the modeling process. And then I'll do this, and this will sort of be the end of the thumb. And I really need to finish this off. I want a nice kind of quad. So I'm going to delete these faces. 2, and let's say grid fill. I want my grid fill to follow this kind of line down because, again, it's at an angle. I want the center to be running down the thumb like this. So I'm going to change the offset. Span should be 2. If the span's only 1, it does that. I want the span to be 2. And I want it to be running, yeah, cross-sectionally like that. Precisely what I want. And then I just bump this out a little bit. So you're already seeing, like, yeah, it's starting to look like a thumb a little bit. That's not too bad. Let's get these fingers connected into the system, and then we can start really, really going with this. So I'm going to take these, and I know I'm going to need space for fingers, so I'm going to delete these because I don't need these faces. And let's look at it from a top view. This is my finger, and we're going to start with my middle finger. We know the top of it should relatively, we built it so the top would line up right about here. And again, the bottom is not, so we're going to fix that. But that's exactly what I want. The tops of these, not the bottoms of these, should line up as precisely as I'm lining them up. And then I'm going to duplicate this for the pointer finger, set that back a little bit. But of course, our pointer and ring fingers aren't about the same length. They are both a little bit smaller and a little bit more set back, but they're also usually about the same length, the pointer and ring fingers. The middle finger is usually the longest. And then the pinky is quite a bit far set back, but if you notice when they line up, the pinky lines up with sort of the first knuckle of my finger here. So I can just scale that down a little bit. And that's about right. This is a good spot too, where if you want to create a more natural hand position, we can let them rest a little bit. We can even take it from a side view and let them rotate down and sort of cascade the fingers a little. And that's a much more natural position to work with. You know, and I think I kind of like, I usually like working on my hands like that. I know riggers don't like it, but I'm a character artist, so I like it. Now let's go ahead and start connecting these up together. I'm gonna do them one at a time. So first select the finger, then I shift select the base of my hand, my palm. I'm gonna hit Control J to join them together. And now I can put these pieces in. Let's go into X-ray mode, 1 for verts. And I wanna get these verts lined up. So I'm gonna snap some of these into position, and I'm gonna average some of these other faces into position. But I'm gonna do a little bit of work in here, sort of make the spaces in between things a little bit more correct to what I want them, especially down here, because I'll be snapping and I want to follow more the shape of the finger. So I can do a couple things. I can select the vert I want to snap it to. So select this one, shift select this one, M, merge to last. And that's not too bad, and it doesn't take too long because I can always hit Shift R to repeat that function. But I got a faster way of doing it because I'm lazy and I like fast ways of doing stuff like this. What I'm going to do is go up to my snapping and turn on vert snapping. And I'm going to leave that little checkbox on. So every time I want to click, and I'm going to set this mode to tweak mode, I can just click something and then just drag it onto it. And then if I turn on this option, it's called, right now, if I did this, it's not merged, it's still just there. But if I turn on this little widget up in the corner, it's called auto merge. And if two things are right on top of each other, it's going to merge it. Now they're all one thing. Now you got to be careful, because if you go nuts with this, you can accidentally snap things you don't want. But that's what the undo key's for. And what's nice about this is it just makes this process quite a bit faster. Just don't forget that you have these settings on. So let's turn that off really quick. And you can see now our first finger is connected up. Beautiful. Let's do the others. Select, shift select, Control J, and start wiring up parts to the hand. So here, I'm sort of preferring, let's see where this is. I think this guy needs to put out a little bit more there. Let's do that. Let's do that one. I didn't really do the adjustment, so I'm going to turn off this and make sure I go ahead and do those little adjustments I did on the last guy. Turn that back on, and it just lets me snap them pretty quickly. Repeat the same process, Control J, leave my snapping off for a second, just to help me line a few things up, almost like a pre-adjustment. So things aren't quite as far off base from where I want them to be. Turn that snapping back on. And let's Fill in the gaps. Sometimes it can be hard when you're starting out with this kind of stuff to really read the mesh. But, you know, trust me, have some confidence. The longer you spend with this kind of stuff, the more this becomes natural to you, as weird as it seems. Like, you're going to start reading these meshes better. They're going to start making sense to you, just in principle. Even though it feels like that couldn't possibly happen. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I make mistakes constantly, as you probably could tell from a lot of these videos that I'm making. But that's like a huge part of the process. Alrighty. So this is a case too where I'm actually going to remove this edge because it's just too close to some of the other things and it's really going to interrupt what I want to do. So let's turn my snapping back on and then we'll wrap this guy up in 15 minutes. Not bad for a hand modeling tutorial. Trust me when I say if you look online at a lot of tutorials doing some of this stuff, they're a lot longer. I try to like give you all the information that I think is most relevant at each important stage. Okay, so now I got this, and it's time to start quadding up some of this and figuring out, because the big thing we need to do is, you know, you say, all right, I got my hand, it's looking pretty good. There's a couple features we're missing, but the biggest problem is how are we going to connect to the arm, especially if my arm and my character don't have the same number of sides. Turn on my character here. So what's going to be, what we're going to try to do is get the side here. If I change it to subdivision, this is going to have 8 sides. And I know this because a 4-sided object, when it gets subdivided, becomes an 8-sided object. 8-sided object gets subdivided again, it becomes 16. And I know this is going to be, I always keep it in those powers of 2 because then I know that my arm is going to be exactly 8, and this can be exactly 8. Let's turn Luna back off. And so the question is, how do I get 8 out of this? I'm going to take this, not this part with the thumb, because if you look at it, the thumb actually has more of a ridge here, and that's what this is all going to be part of. And I'm going to, let's just take all these. I'm going to extrude them back like this. And maybe pull them a little bit like that. And let's scale it up a little bit. I need space for my thumb to move. Right now, it's just going to be squares, so I'm actually going to create a nice little loop around it by working my way around in a nice circle, and then Control B. And this is creating something that I'll, we'll be able to adjust and soften. But a nice, oh, definitely turn that snapping off. I don't want that. A nice channel that sort of runs through the whole thing. So now the question becomes, how do I keep everything nice and even and in quads? Let's open all this up here. I'm going to delete these faces, and I'm going to check how many sides I have. I can do that by going up here into my viewport overlays and turning on statistics. And if I alter option select this ring, it's going to say that's 12 edges, which means I got to get rid of 4. So let's get rid of these 4. And it's going to make this now 8. Now that would be a solution, but I got some pretty nasty geometry here as a result. So how do I fix it? I'm going to go from here to here. J, hit this edge and delete that. And then I can, from a top view maybe, just shift these back so that I have a nice cube. Because this is not a nice shape. This is a much nicer shape because there's a nice flow to it. That's a pretty easy one right there. How about the top? Well, we're going to cheat here too. So I'm going to select this and select this one last so it's white. M and merge to center. This is just, like before. I can delete this and turn this into a nice big, they call this a kite because it's literally shaped like a kite. And now I've turned it into 4 sides. And what's nice about this is if I add a subdivision surface modifier, it's not going to give me a lot of messy stuff. However, still one thing to fix, these knuckles. Remember we were working on this before. All I'm going to do is just connect them together like so. And don't worry, I'll get the sides too. This is good because it's going to give us more geometry in an area we really need it. So let's hit this, Control R, here to here. Oh, I hit F. You do not want to hit F here instead of J. Here's why. Because what's actually happened is that is still the face there, and it created this line. It's bad geo, bad geo. So instead, hit J when you're going across something, because now I actually have 2 quads. So I made a mistake, but it was a good learning opportunity. Let's take this one, same deal, here to here, and J, and here to here, and J. The little triangles in the palm here, not a big deal. In fact, they actually help reinforce the shape we want. When you're satisfied with your hand, it's not too hard to link it up. Let's just get its pivot into the right spot. So it's about here. And now let's connect it into our body. I think there's a little bit to do with this. You might want to pop it into sculpt mode really quick, just with G, and just lift, soften, and move a couple things. Save that. But this is a fine start. And if you really want to give it that perfectly kind of round opening, we can always go to that Loop Tools, circle. And then I adjust where this circle should happen, and then S of, you know, Z, just to give it the right shape. So let's turn off this subdivision because I don't want it. And let's bring up my Luna. So obviously this hand is too big for this character. That is anticipated. To join it up, we also need to activate some of these features here. So the mirror, I'm going to just disable right now because I'm going to mirror across. But my subdivision, I need to be able to apply. And what's going to happen if I apply my subdivision is it wasn't first, and sometimes it can create some weird edges. This one seemed okay. But what I more often will do when I want to do something like this is I'm going to apply both of these. And I'm going to delete half of this model. So I can pop into the front view, hit it in Z, B, and just drag over half the model. X, delete faces. So that I know I have a nice clean version. Neither of them have any modifiers. And now, because I applied that, I have the right number of edges. So let's get this into place. And I'm just going to snap it there. Let's scale it down, and let's look at it from this this angle. So let's rotate it to the side. I'm using the little upper left-hand corner, has a little readout of its rotation. It's too hard. All right, let's just do it manually. Get it down, put it there, and then try to scale it till it fits the character. So we get it close. And this is, we see why we built the hand by itself. It's a pretty complicated shape, and it's not as easy to do without a little standby. So I'm going to check my character reference again and just see how big relative to the character. This seems about right. She's got pretty slender hands, so this seems about appropriate. Select both of these and J. Now, of course, the one I pick in order is important. I want to pick this one, but I'm going to go all transforms anyway to set my pivot down to the ground. Pivot should always be at the sort of the center of the character like this. And then all I have to do is just join up those merge to last, or I can do that trick we used before with my auto merge on and just drag my points. Just make sure you get the right ones, right? Because if you get the wrong one, it can be kind of a pain to fix it. Lots of adjustments still going to be needed, but let's go ahead, add a mirror modifier, and then we can add a subdivision surface after it. And, you know, we got a base mesh for our character. There's some things that are going to have to be adjusted, but generally it's following the rules. And so give yourself a nice save. We can maybe even save this as a new base mesh character because we can work on top of it. Doesn't look like the character yet, but in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can clean up a couple topology features in here and then start sculpting the musculature, the real anatomy that's on the base of the character. Good.